Hey there, YouTubers! This is Kazuto, here to bring you another video. Now, for those of you who don't know, when I first started my entire channel a while ago, I used to do deck profiles for Yu-Gi-Oh! So we're going to go back to that for now, because it's going to take a long time for me to get the internet situation fixed before I can live stream again. When I did my live stream of Five Nights at Candy's, it was having lag issues. So, let's just go back to the good old-fashioned deck profile, shall we? Let's start with a deck profile that is one of my favorite decks in my entire collection. Ice Barriers. So, this is basically a non-competitive, non-tournament deck. This is just for my collection. So, if it's not inherently obvious, I bought 3 copies of the structure deck, so this is my take on it. So we're going to start off with fairly obvious 3 copies of Trishula, the Sub-Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier, which is the original Japanese name, but in English it's just called Trishula Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Basically, he's your main synchro that you're going to go into. The whole purpose of this guy right here is he's the boss monster who basically banishes up to 3 cards when he's summoned. That's it. That's the whole point to him. Outside of if he ever gets destroyed, say by Mirror Force or something, you can use him to special summon Trishula, the Dragon of the Ice Barrier, from your extra deck or graveyard for free. So, ignoring summon conditions. So, pretty good card. But the problem is that he says when summoned, so he's kind of like he's a timing thing. Next we run, since, as I said, this is a non-tournament deck, it's just a for fun build, 3 copies of the original Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Those of you who don't know this card, Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier is a very powerful level 9 synchro monster that requires 2 tuners, and 1 or more non-tuner monsters, who I believe have to be... I'm pretty certain that it is. It's just 2 or more... 1 or more non-tuner monsters with 2 tuners. Is it 2 tuners? Let me double check. No, it's 1 tuner plus 2 or more non-tuner monsters. Forgive me. It's been a while since I've thoroughly read the card. I do know, however, its effect. Its effect is, when it's synchro summoned, you can target 1 card on your opponent's feet, or banish. It doesn't target, my bad. It just banishes. It outright banishes 1 card from your opponent's graveyard, hand, and field. Since it's non-targeting removal, Obelisk is affected by this thing. It will be killed. It'll be gone. So this is a good out to Obelisk the Tormentor, as well as this one over here, being another out to Obelisk. Since Obelisk is only protected by targeting effects, and since those 2 Trishes don't target, they just outright banish. GG. We also run 3 Gungnir, the Dragon of the Ice Barrier. Now, Gungnir is your card destruction. He discards up to 2 cards from your hand to destroy the same number of cards on your opponent's field. He does target, so you're not really going to use this if your opponent's using an Egyptian God card. Specifically Obelisk. If they're using Obelisk, you're not using this. You're going into Trish. So, but Gungnir is very useful in other ways. He helps get rid of back row that can be pesky and annoying. So, fairly good. You also run 3 Brionac, the Dragon of the Ice Barrier. This card allows you to discard any number of cards from your hand to return the same number of cards on your opponent's field back to their hand, which is pretty funny, but he's a once per turn, as most of them are, because they got errated to be once per turn. And that is actually pretty good, in my opinion, that they did that errata, because otherwise this would be too broken. And then the newly reprinted Duloran, Tiger King of the Ice Barrier, whose effect is now a hard once per turn. So, no more of that shenanigans with Symbol of Heritage. That's not happening again. So, pretty generic. Let's step on to the main deck, shall we? For monsters, we run 3 copies of Revealer of the Ice Barrier. Revealer of the Ice Barrier is basically your I'm pretty certain it's the Stratos of the deck. Because it, you discard a card from your hand to special summon a Ice Barrier tuner monster from your deck. So, I'm pretty certain it counts similar to a Stratos. But anyways, that's the way it works. You really want to use this thing to get your tuners out. That's all it's really useful for, is creating a synchro play. So that's the basic gist. Then you have 3 speaker for the Ice Barrier, which can special summon itself immediately when you control another Ice Barrier monster. And it can also banish itself from the graveyard, except for the turn it was sent there, to special summon a token. So, both really good effects for setting up another synchro play. Now, for my higher level Ice Barriers, I chose the 2 best, in my opinion, because Ice Barriers are supposed to be a control deck, so the whole point is to control the field. I feel this card at 2 is a good thing, because if it's at 1, you're almost never going to see it. And if it's at 3, it's Brick City. 2, in my opinion, of Medium of the Ice Barrier is perfection. Because, yeah, you might not see this early game, but you might run into it and have the requirements to summon it. Medium for the Ice Barrier special summons itself for free when your opponent controls 4 or more cards than you do, which is very good. On top of that, it limits your opponent to only activating 1 spell or trap card per turn. So, very good for a 2200 beat stick, because it slows down your opponent's spells and traps, which is kind of the whole gist of the Ice Barriers. Then we run 2 copies of General Wayne. As most other decks tell you, General Wayne's really good. He special summons himself if you control another Ice Barrier. When he's summoned, he searches out an Ice Barrier spell trap card, adds it to your hand. Another Rhoda, basically, but this time for spells and traps. Which, pretty good. I just don't think 3 is a good idea. 2 copies of Warlock. Warlock forces is basically the same thing as Denko Sekka, where it forces your opponent to set spell and trap cards for a turn before they can activate them. So, kind of like that idea. 2 Zuijin. If Zuijin's in the graveyard, you can special summon it back if you control an Ice Barrier, but it banishes itself after, it does so. And you can basically use it to create a synchro play. That's kind of the whole point. Prior to the Ice Barrier, at 2, obviously, Prior to the Ice Barrier special summons itself, but you are restricted to no longer summoning level 5 or higher monsters, which I think is bull, because the whole point is to synchro summon into your big synchros. They could have just limited you to, Ice Barrier synchro monsters. That would have been better, but it is what it is. They could have just, there's many things they could have done with that card. Made it better. 3 copies of Defender of the Ice Barrier. The reason I like Defender is because of its effect. Its effect states that if you control another Ice Barrier monster, and you control this card, your opponent cannot attack any Ice Barrier monster you control if their monster has more attack points than Defender's defense points. So for those of you who don't know, Defender of the Ice Barrier has 1600 defense points. So not an easy thing to get past. Next, we got 3 copies of Cryomancer of the Ice Barrier. Cryomancer is the level 2 tuner that is basically saying neither player can attack. It's basically a gravity bind. Neither player can attack with level 4 or higher monsters. So it's pretty funny. Then you got 2 copies of the new little Toad tuner. The Hexa Spirit of the Ice Barrier. For those of you who don't know, this thing can just basically change its level by sending another Ice Barrier tuner from the deck to the graveyard, and its level becomes that level. So, pretty good. Now, for obvious spells, you run 3 Medallion as your Rhoda, because it's your actual Rhoda, like the spell and trap card variant Rhoda. You run 3 Winds Over the Ice Barrier. Winds Over the Ice Barrier is really good for, like, if you get a incorrect hand and you want to summon something that's actually going to extend your plays, you got this to back you up. So this can fix a lot of problems. I really love this card. And the fact that it can banish itself from the graveyard except during the turn it's sent there to basically add back one of my banished or ice barriers that's in the grave back to my hand so I can use it later. Pretty good. Then you got your Monster Reborn, which is the Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier. As I said, this allows you to target an Ice Barrier monster that is in your graveyard, special summon it to the field, and as long as this card remains on the field, if you control 3 monsters with Ice Barrier in the name, basically it protects them from being targeted. So, I think it's activated effects of your opponent's monsters that were special summoned from the extra deck. So, they're protected from extra deck monsters, basically, but everything else can get rid of them. And then you got 1 Magic Triangle of the Ice Barrier for targeting removal. Pretty obvious. Now, for giggles around here, I decided, why not run 3 Mirror Force? And for those of you who are wondering why this is so shiny, this is the super rare Mirror Force. So, I have a whole play set of these. I have 4 of these, actually, of this exact one, the super rare one. So I like the super rare Mirror Force. The reason Mirror Force is in this deck is because it is a very decent counter still. It is still a very good card. Because your opponent is foolish enough to attack you, Mirror Force is getting rid of them. And that's assuming they don't have anything to get rid of Mirror Force before then. If they use up all their resources and then attack you and you have a Mirror Force, they're not getting rid of Mirror Force. So they're going to get Mirror Force in the face. And then, of course, 3 Fiendish Chain. Fiendish Chain is fairly good because, it's a control card. It targets and equips to a monster that has an effect, and then negates that effect, makes it so they can't switch battle positions, and they cannot attack. Pretty good. Sets you up so you're perfectly safe. As I've stated, this is a for fun build. This is more of a control-centric Ice Barrier deck that I just built for the fun of it. It's not really meant for tournament play. My actual tournament deck, which I'll be uploading at a later date, is going to be the Cyber Style, which is the combination between Cyber Dark and Cyber Dragon. So that's what I'm going to be using mainly in tournaments, is a tournament legal Cyber Dark, Cyber Dragon combo deck, which is called Cyber Style, which is the whole name for that group. And for those of you who don't know, Cyber Darks and Cyber Dragons are part of one archetype. It's called Cyber Style. They are sub-archetypes within Cyber Style. Cyber Style is the official name for the entire archetype. And these are sub-archetypes within that archetype, is Cyber Dark and Cyber Dragon. And the whole point of the 2 sub-archetypes was to work together. And the new support that's coming out in the new structure deck is going to help with that. So I'm very excited to get my hands on that in October. So please look forward to that video when I get the 3 copies of that structure deck. It will be probably one of the most amazing decks in my collection. It's going to be one of my stronger decks for my collection because it's going to be more competitive than Ice Barriers. And it's probably going to be more competitive than Exodia sitting over there. Yeah, I have my Exodia deck just sitting over there. For those of you who don't remember, I built an entire Tournament Illegal Exodia deck. That thing's just hanging out in the corner over there. And I've actually updated it a little more, so it has another new version of it. But we'll get into that another day. But anyways, if you like the video, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves posted when I update and post a new video. Have a nice day, and see you all later!